Welcome back, everyone, to Meditations by Gregory T. Obert, bringing the best new guided meditations and mental health discussions every week. I'm your host, clinical psychologist, Dr. Gregory T. Obert. Thank you so much for joining me today. And this week's episode is going to be a continuation of the Therapy 101 series that I've been doing. I decided to go back and rename it that just to kind of have it stand out a little bit from the guided meditations themselves. So I would love to hear from you if you're enjoying this series. Please do let me know. Leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening to this, or reach out, whether that is through my website, the Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute, on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you see me. I would love to hear from you if you are enjoying this series as much as I am enjoying making it. If you have missed the previous episodes, I would highly encourage you to go check them out. I will likely take some time to make a playlist on YouTube for this. You can just search my name, Dr. Gregory T. Obert, and listen to just these episodes rather than have to kind of sort through these and the meditations. But the previous episodes I have include what to expect when you are looking for a therapist, as well as deep dives into what is trauma, what is depression, and what is anxiety. I, of course, would be happy to do deep dives into other mental health conditions, and I was planning on doing that today until I found an article come across my Twitter feed that I just had to discuss, so I decided to pivot a little bit, and today we're going to be talking about why on earth someone would want to pay out of pocket for therapy. And that idea may sound a little strange. Why do you think you can fill up a whole episode on this, Greg? But the reality is that there's a lot of nuance and hidden costs to healthcare that most people don't really know about. And that's because health insurance does a really good job of covering that up. So if you happened to follow through on my previous episode around what is psychotherapy and how do you get a therapist, you are likely going to be seeing somebody who is in network with insurance. Now, for those that are a little bit unfamiliar with that, essentially what that means is that a provider, could be a therapist, could be a medical doctor, whoever, they have decided to accept the terms and conditions of a specific insurance company. In exchange, they get access to a whole bunch of people who have that insurance. So one of the big things that providers have to agree to is being reimbursed a certain amount for their services. So a provider could charge anything. Say, I wanted to see you for an hour and provide psychotherapy. I could charge you $10,000 for that hour. If I'm in network with an insurance company, it doesn't matter what I charge. They're only going to reimburse me what I agreed to with the initial contract. This, of course, benefits the client as well because then, well, depending on their plan, of course, but most plans are going to include mental health services to some degree, so you likely will only be paying, some kind of copay or co-insurance, which is not a set fee, it's more of a percentage of the cost. So most people essentially are going to be paying, between $25, maybe $40 per session for a therapy session. And that's great for them and their wallet. The issue becomes, though, the actual kind of hidden costs associated with taking a deal like that as a provider and also as a client. And I wanted to outline a few reasons for why it can actually be maybe a little bit detrimental for you to take that deal. It's tempting, and for many people it's going to work out, and that's fine. For other people, though, I would argue that maybe paying out of pocket is going to help you in the long run in ways that paying in network using your insurance would not. So what are some reasons that someone would benefit from paying out of pocket? And, full disclosure here for those interested in working with me at Royal Oasis Psychotherapy Institute, I don't take insurance right now. And the reasons for that I'm going to outline here because I find that it is much better for the therapist, it's much better for the client, and it's much better for the treatment goals. And they're going to get accomplished in ways that you can't necessarily do when you are using insurance. So let me dive into it, and I have a few reasons here. Let's jump in. So first and foremost, one reason that you might want to pay out of pocket is you're looking for a therapist with a unique skill set. So this could be somebody who has devoted many years of their lives to a specific type of disorder. Maybe this is somebody who offers some kind of treatment that you're not really going to get by using traditional insurance. So let me give you an example of this. I specialize in PTSD, trauma treatment. Now, there are a variety of great treatments that can last an hour per week, and they do wonderful work. There's another treatment that's called prolonged exposure, and I talked a little bit more about this in my trauma episode. So if you want to learn more about that treatment there, well, you can go there and listen to that. But as a brief kind of summary, it's a 90-minute treatment. Now, when it comes to insurance companies, they don't really see the value in doing a session that is beyond 89 minutes. So the code that you would use as a provider, you'd code it as 53 minutes up to 89 minutes. And if I spend 53 minutes with a client, or if I spend 89 or 90 minutes with a client, it doesn't matter, I'm going to get reimbursed the same amount. Now, when I think about the deal on that, that's not a really great deal. And I say that because I am spending a session and a half with this particular client. And they may need it. In fact, prolonged exposure is a wonderful treatment. I've seen so many people change their lives by going through it. Unfortunately, when I'm kind of limited by insurance companies, I'm not really going to be willing to offer that type of treatment. I'm going to be more willing to offer therapy, or types of therapies that stick within the hour. Because if I'm not going to be reimbursed any differently than I would if I only spent an hour with somebody, or the minimum of 53 minutes, well, then why would I offer a treatment that is 90 minutes in length when I get reimbursed the same? Rather, in order to, keep the lights on, bring more revenue into the business, I would want to offer a treatment that is effective and isn't going to cut into my next session. So I can have 2 sessions rather than one person for a session and a half. Unfortunately, for the people that really could benefit from prolonged exposure, again, I would absolutely offer it if they needed it. I'm going to be less likely to want to offer that. And that's just the reality of working with insurance, that there are going to be some treatments that they put a limit on. And we kind of know this intuitively. Think in your lives about anybody who has paid for something. Whoever is paying the bill calls the shots. And in this case, insurance is going to call the shots. And that's really my second point here on my list. Insurance can dictate treatment. I've had situations with clients where they had decided that they were going to use their insurance, and as they went along, they didn't realize that their insurance only offered so many sessions. And so as we were, say 5-10 sessions in, really doing some great work, all of a sudden insurance said, yeah, you've reached your limit. And so now they're expected to pay out of pocket. And that sucks, frankly, because you pay insurance so that you have benefits. And unfortunately, for some of these insurance plans, they just don't offer the same benefits or good benefits in perpetuity. They are businesses as well, and they need to cut costs here and there. And so you may end up having a plan where, yeah, you can go see a therapist, but you can only see him 10 times, 12 times, once a month. I had a situation recently where a client was working with another therapist, and they were doing testing. They were doing ADHD testing. And the results of the tests showed that this person did not, in fact, have ADHD, which is great. That's wonderful. Insurance had approved of the testing, and then when the testing showed that this person did not have ADHD, they pulled out. And they said, nope, just kidding. Actually, because you now don't have ADHD, you're on the hook for this psychological testing. And out of pocket, we're talking probably about $1,500 for testing. That is absolutely terrible. That's absolutely terrible and unacceptable. Yet insurance, they do that. They're allowed to do that because they're the ones footing the bill. And they have you sign, if we decide not to pay for something, then you're on the hook for it. My last big example that I have is I've worked with a few people in the past where their insurance plans are kind of farmed out in a sense. So on the sticker, it's going to be one of your big name insurance companies. But the big name insurance company farms out medical clearance, authorization, to a third party. So when the new year rolls around, a person may have, let's say, 10 therapy sessions, and that's great. And then after the 10, it's the therapist's responsibility to get authorization from this third party and basically make a case that, yeah, I still need to see this person. They're still, suffering and they need treatment. Well, depending on the person you get, the actual third party involved, they may or may not authorize a number of additional sessions. And then even if they do authorize a number of additional sessions, the insurance company still reserve the right to refuse payment of any sort. So at the end of the day, it can be quite frustrating for clients to hear that this is what's going on behind the scenes, and they still might not get paid, or their sessions may not get paid. And on top of that, as the therapist, in this particular case with authorization, I have to spend the time putting together a case, spending time on the phone, and sometimes it's fast and that's great. Other times it takes a while, and my time is valuable, and that's not something that I'm necessarily gonna get paid for. Because is it the client's responsibility to pay for this authorization piece that the insurance company is forcing? I don't know. I personally don't think it's their fault and they need to foot the bill on that. Some other therapists might think that, but I wouldn't feel all that great charging for it. Regardless, that's my time that I'm not getting paid for. Next up, you might have a high deductible plan. And so thinking about your insurance, maybe you're pretty healthy, right? And let's say, just pulling a number out of thin air here, let's just say your deductible is $4,000 and you don't really have any medical expenses. So you might ultimately be on the hook for paying $4,000 in therapy session fees out of pocket before your standard insurance even kicks in. And so this is a case where, if your costs for using the insurance or not using insurance are effectively going to be the same, maybe there's no reason to actually use insurance. Because another piece that I wanted to mention is the privacy component. And what I mean by that is Insurance companies don't get to know what is going on in sessions unless they, of course, audit me, and then they get to see the therapy notes. But they do get to know what I'm diagnosing you with. And for some people, they don't really want a record of any particular mental health diagnoses. Maybe they want to be a little bit more discreet. And so when you include insurance, they foot the bill, so they get to know what I diagnose you with. And that might not be something that you want.